to Ellen Weaver.
Hey, so we all got the little got it buttons. And this is a really crazy time to be here on the planet. And yet we're here. And if any of you got to read the intro or the piece that I sent out, excuse me. This is not exactly straight IFS, which you can get very, very easily and successfully. I also sent an email. There's an IFS immersion that's free for 30 days with pretty much all of the top trainers. And that went out maybe an hour ago. So you will have that. But for me,
all right, Ellen, let's explain what IFS means.
I'm about to, I promise. Internal family systems used to be called therapy, and it's still therapy, but it's also very much being used in pretty much all spiritual settings, and it needs to rest in that being deeply within our bodies and not all the instructions from our heads, including the things like be conscious, be present, be embodied. All of these instructions that we give ourselves from our head is all top down. And my experience of IFS, which I've been studying for close to 15 years, is that it rests very, very nicely within Philip Shepard's radical wholeness. There's a whole piece about the work, but I failed to put the, if you can put that in the chat, Chaya, I'd really appreciate it. Radical Wholeness by Philip Shepard. Philip Shepard. There's quite a lot about him in the handout, which is about settling down and settling in to the whole of our body, and very much awakening the connection, since we're all women, whether we have a physical uterus or an etheric uterus. It's a major part of our being able to receive. And so much of the IFS work is about becoming present to a much wider scope of who we actually are. Many, many forms of therapy even suggest that you can learn about your traumas and you can learn about this and that, but there's nothing you can do about it. And that is the complete opposite with the internal family therapies. One of the biggest differences is that the self, our essence, our soul, at least most of our levels of soul, are there regardless of how early or how much trauma anyone has sustained. And a lot of our the people that we see in hospitals or schools or whatever our settings are have a lot of trauma. It's a really challenging time to be human, and the understanding that each of us is our own self, and we're also completely interconnected with everything else, just like the trees root down and that whole mycelial level interconnects all of them, and interconnects that with the roots and the minerals and the pebbles and the earth herself. And resting in connection with the earth, not just we're like these things that are on the earth, that we are completely part of the earth, that we're completely interconnected with each other, everything. And that's a major teaching of IFS, is the interconnection. And that one of the things, all right, I'll just read this quote from Dick Schwartz, who developed IFS 40 odd years ago. At its core, IFS is a loving way of relating internally to your parts and externally to the people in your life. And there's so much loss and fear and upset these days for really, really good reasons. And yet, shifting the wars within us can so contribute to developing the kind of world that we need going forward. And so self is the wholeness that's meant to lead our system. And for people who've had a lot of trauma, the self is not gone, but it can be pushed out of the way so that our parts don't know that there is this interconnected wholeness that is the center of our being and that can help us through the traumas and other challenges. Our parts exist. I mean, this is based in the multiplicity of our minds, which is no longer a new concept, but it's important to understand that we have a lot of parts, whether they're traumatized or not. And when they get hit hard enough, then they get distorted or constricted or hidden or trapped in what can be really horrible situations, but they can get help. And part of that help is that we all have what are called protectors. Some of those are the managers who want us to look right and act right and be acceptable. And the exiled parts are usually the youngest and most injured. And going straight to an exile usually backfires. So it's really important to connect with both the managers and what are called the firefighters, the parts that distract us from the exile popping up to the surface. And knowing that the firefighters are also protectors, they're trying to protect us from the challenges that were overwhelming and couldn't be faced in an earlier time. And so the managers do that through being critical or judgmental or narrow focus. This is the way to do it. And that's certainly affected by the wide variety of cultures and religions and all the different ways that people have taken in what they think of themselves and how they're relating to the world. The firefighters are often where we see our addictions, where we see the dissociating, where we see some of the injuries and or getting sick are all firefighter behavior. And this culture for sure wants to slam down on those firefighters, not understanding that they're also wounded and that they're protecting exiled parts. And we want to get to know them rather than say, cut out that drinking, stop doing this, don't cut paper, if remembering an old Mel Brooks. So I'm just going to read this one paragraph. We connect with the multiplicity of our minds and the many ways parts came in to protect us, especially when how they do so is often destructive in the present. Our traumatized parts got stuck in the painful places that brought them into being. We get to know them now with kindness and help them understand who we are now, what they might need, no matter how extreme their behavior may be. We learn to see their trials, who they are still protecting, and help the other parts in us who are angry or frightened of them to make room. It may think we're 12 when we're really 62 and now have the skills and supports to handle what we couldn't then. Some of our worst critics become our best cheerleaders. And I wanted to just open to questions now. We're going to go into all of this more deeply, but are there questions now? Because I'm just doing a very wide overview.
So I wonder.
Oh, go ahead, Shefa.
I was going to say that, like, the way that I experience my parts are voices during meditation. That there's lots of different, that I get to know different voices, and that each of them has a different tone of voice, and that I can get to know who to trust, who to listen to, where they're coming from, and what to pay attention to, and what what needs healing. And I guess the question I always ask my voices is, I say, I say, how old are you?
Yeah.
It's always the first question. I'm like, wait a minute, how old are you? But and I wonder if this is the same kind of work that you're talking about, and I just call them the voices, but
sure.
And then,
yeah. And sometimes, I mean, because you're you and you have this auditory connection that's so deep, all those voices are your parts, and some of them are already wise and whole, and some of them may need help. So, and in addition, it's the things that jump in, like you say, I would like to walk 5 miles today. And part of you says, yeah, go for it, even though you haven't walked more than 1/3 of a mile in 2 years. And another part will say, don't do that. You're going to be miserable. Well, that's a kind of nice example, but those are actually two parts. So if you wanted to check in with the one who's saying, oh, go for it, and see what is it that's a little behind that go for it when it's not accurate. One day it might be, but it's not accurate at the time. And the other part is saying, oh, no, 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 and where is that part coming from? What is it? Simply, it's logical, which it may be. It may be just, this is logical, and it may be, you are going to really mess yourself up and be so miserable for the next days or weeks if you push yourself to walk 5 miles today. That may not be a great example, but for me, since I can barely walk around the block, it's a good example.
Me too.
And did you have?
Well, it's just sort of, just that helped. Was going to ask for kind of a working definition of parts, and what I'm remembering is years and years ago I studied psychosynthesis, and he talked about subpersonalities, and I'm wondering if that's the same thing.
It's not exactly, because as the study of IFS has gone further and further, it's become clear that they're really inner sentient beings.
Uh-huh.
And that they can become remarkably helpful when they're not smushed down, but they can't really come up until the time is right. And Peter Levine also, I mean, before he started the somatic, I forget what it's called, it was, don't go straight for those most wounded parts, because it doesn't actually work. But finding the parts that are coming up, and we'll do an example of that in a little bit. But is that helpful? I mean, is that the working definition? What would be a good working definition? Internal family systems is an enlightening, non-pathologizing framework for psychotherapy, pastoral care, mediation, and literally everything else. It's a way of bringing the goodness of the universe together with the many parts of each of us. So, and that soul, I would guess that each of us here have a connection with that essence, that soul that's meant to help us be in wholeness, and that may have been taught to stay out of certain things. And we all do have blind spots. Until they become not blind spots, we don't know that they're there. But certainly a lot of my clients and colleagues are suddenly dissociated. They've been fully present, and then you can tell they're not there anymore. And so that's an opportunity to see, who just knocked you out, not as a judgmental question, but as a loving question. Can you help us with, what you needed or needed not to have us look at? And in that case, we might be going too fast. So let's back up and make more space for the part that's like, oh, don't go near there. That's not safe. And one of the biggest things is, because the managers think about things ahead and want to keep those exiled parts away, because of when we couldn't manage and it was totally overwhelming, even though now we have the skills and supports in the system. The firefighters jump in when an exile jumps through anyway, and they want to do anything to distract us. So the managers and firefighters tend to hate each other until they know that they're both working for the protection. So, for example, if someone is a binge eater, the managers keep saying, that's disgusting, you're a pig, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, the firefighters are getting more and more agitated by all this shaming that's being sent to them, and they'll go out and binge, which then makes the cycle keep repeating and repeating and repeating. But when they get that, like, oh, these are both wanting to protect the person, and how do we get to know each other and find a way to work as a team, that's going to make a huge difference. because any way that we're at war within is harmful to us and may be harmful to the way we relate in the outer world. So I took a look this morning at Ellen Dosick's Cosmic Times for November, and there is just one paragraph that I wanted to add into where we are. And what is the primary divine principle? Oneness, that all is a manifestation of the divine, and so all is holy. That there is but one weave made up of an uncountable number of individual threads, each one precious, holy, and integral to the whole, all interconnected and responsible for the whole. And with this then is the corollary that each thread be the strongest, purest, most vibrant and alive that each can be, that each human being have the freedom to flourish, to fulfill the potential to become the most enlightened and loving expression of self that each one designed for this lifetime. And of course, then, that freedom to flourish would never be at the expense of another's freedom to flourish. Yeah, exactly. And, right at the beginning, it says, dearest human beings, if it seems to you as though your world is falling apart, we assure you that it is. You are in body at a time when all that has been is being cracked and shattered, so that a new world has the possibility of being made. As Ukraine is razed, as entire kibbutzim and communities in Israel are being decimated, as Gaza is being razed, so your internal landscape is identically affected. You are being wiped clean. And there's a lot about our being heartbroken, which where else could we be but heartbroken? And can we keep leaning towards that wholeness? Can we keep leaning towards hope? And that's a really hard thing. And the internal family systems therapy is a really helpful way to go about this, because you're supporting the self to be the center, and in that support, the protectors who can then reach to the most exiled parts. They generally carry and pulse into us pain, shame, fear, rage, sadness, terror, despair. And our parts are, as I said, inner sentient beings who transform through love and compassion. This is a quote from Dick. Each have qualities and resources to bring to the person's life that were not available while they were tied up in protective roles. They have been characterized negatively in our culture, seeing the part as its troublesome behavior or burden, rather than listening to its real story of how it had to, or even agreed to take on the role. And Frank Anderson, who's another wonderful teacher, I believe in a fundamental and universal truth. Trauma blocks love and connection, and healing our wounds provides access to the love and goodness that is inherent in us all. IFS is also a paradigm for living. Those exposed to it live more consciously and choose to be more self-connected and openly compassionate. That's from his book, Transcending Trauma with IFS, and that's in your handout. So you have all of this information. I'm going to go on a bit of what could be seemed tangent, but all of these are circling around and in. The earth is about 75% water, and the mother waters of creation are oceans. Everything came from the mother waters. I also refer to as the Shekhinah, but whoever the mother waters are for you, we're at least 75% fluids in our body. And the chemical component of our main fluid, the interstitial fluids, are almost exactly like the Earth's oceans, the mother waters. And so we have, I don't remember how many trillion cells, but literally every single cell is resting in the mother waters, is resting in the divine feminine. There's interstitial fluid in each cell, but that every cell is resting. And sometimes when I'm so tight, I just need to remember that every cell is resting in the divine embrace. And Shefa, I hope you know where we're going. So sing along with me. It's also in your handout, but I think if we just do the English, it's easy. We are resting in the divine embrace, timeless time and spaceless space. We are resting in the divine embrace, timeless time and placeless place. We are resting in the divine embrace, timeless time and placeless place. We are resting in the divine embrace, timeless time and placeless place. And I apologize, I can not remember whether it's spaceless space or placeless place.
Placeless place.
And I still don't hear it. S or P?
Placeless.
Okay,
P.
good, thank you. So taking a moment to let yourself drop further in and down. The other essential that's the radical wholeness is that the pelvic brain, which they've known we've had but kept pushing away, has the same amount of neural connectivity as our cranial brain. The ancient Mayans had this symbol of cranial brain, pelvic brain, and lots of connectivity and space for the connection for the cranial brain to rest and be held in the pelvic brain, which is the shape. And it's an aliveness that is essential, particularly now where we've had 3,000 and something years of the patriarchy, and we're just at the very beginning of the new breath, where cranial brain is thinking and doing, pelvic brain is being. And, you know, back when it was, I can't remember, but a long time ago, that was understood to be the center, the hara, the place of our brain. And then over several thousand years, it's become the cranial brain. And we're certainly taught in school, forget it, there is nothing else. And we're just thinking and doing machines. But we need the balance of beingness, and to have our doing come from being, and our thinking supported by our being. So just taking the opportunity to drop down and in. The pelvic floor is actually a diaphragm that is smaller, but the same as our big thoracic diaphragm. And it's meant to initiate the breath. So, and for most of us, that here's the thoracic diaphragm, and it comes down, and it doesn't have a partner to move with it. And we need that. And if we're going to survive and help this planet survive, we need to connect with the deep feminine of being and of connecting high heart, and uterine heart. And right now, with so much that's just heartbroken, it's really important for both the high heart, which is universal love. It's where the thymus is, this beautiful butterfly-shaped gland behind the breastbone, about halfway from throat to heart. And the high heart is universal love. And the more we can send that universal love through every part of our being, through every system, as well as supporting the immune system. And the uterine heart is our place of receiving. For men, the heart is their place of receiving, but for women, both head and heart are the giving out. So if anyone else needs something, they tend to be first before us. The uterine heart is the place where we can receive, where it's easier to say yes or no, or not now. But our hearts are, well, the word that came was imperiled by all of the horror that's going on. And so it's very important both for the uterine heart and the high heart to be supporting the heart, because it is the portal to the one heart. It is the portal for our connection with the oneness. And wholeness is our primary sense. It's not about allowing body, mind, and spirit to come together. That's already separating us from everything else. There's nothing that isn't affected by everything else. Meeting everything with curiosity, there's a better chance to surrender to wholeness. An invitation for the brain in our head to rest with the brain in our pelvic bowl. And curiosity is an absolutely wonderful way to meet things. I think about Alice in Wonderland, who had really could have been terrifying things happening, but she just kept saying, curiouser and curiouser, curiouser and curiouser. It's kind of the tide of anxiety and the greater spaciousness of curiosity, which is one of the key 8 C's in IFS, which are curiosity, compassion, caring, creativity, courage, calm, connectedness, and clarity. So just with those 8, you're already shifting a lot of how the world is coming in. I know when I get really anxious, I can barely figure out how to open my door with just, it's one little key. And as soon as I can drop back into curiosity, It's clear how to do it. It's easy. And let's do an exercise. Settling as much down and in as you can. And noticing if there's any particular swirl going on in your mind, whether it has to do with this class or not. A lot of us are swirling. And checking in if any part or voice from that swirl can identify itself as something that's going on right now. And offering it our kindness and our presence. You might say, I'm really sorry it's so hard right now. Is there any way I can help you? And whatever you hear, noticing that your first response to it might be annoyance. It might be, ugh, not that again. It might be any number of things, including a very kind and caring response. And if it's a, oh, here we go again, you might ask what that part needs to just go to the side a little so that you can connect more directly with whatever this upset part has to say. And asking yourself, how am I feeling towards this part? And again, you might be annoyed. You might feel connected, compassionate. And it's not about the part, it's just towards it. And if I notice that I'm annoyed that here it is again, being willing to recognize that it's most likely another aspect of that same part, but it's new. It's coming up new if it's already been worked with. And that you really do want to hear from it. And you can invite any of the parts that are having a negative response. What would they need to just move a little bit to the side? And then you might ask the part, how old do you think I am? And the parts very often think we're either under 10 or maybe young teenagers. It's very rare for a part to know our age, or even if we're a young adult, it doesn't know that we're 79. I'm just noticing and making space in the pelvic bowl. Our Yesod and Malchut have such a spaciousness to offer. And if you're feeling alone with this part and not very connected with yourself with a capital S, you might ask the archangels to come in with you, the Shekhinah to come in with you, any animal or other guides that you know or that you're meeting for the first time, to come join you in wanting to be of help and supporting you and feeling that you're not alone. How may I help? And expanding your own sense of compassion and caring, being curious about who this part is and how old it is, how old it thinks we are. And noticing if you let your breathing come more from the pelvic bowl and pelvic floor, that you can relax even more into this quieter place to be with what's going on in the moment. And what do you need to connect with me at this time? And whether anything or nothing at all happened, just take another minute and then we'll come back. And coming back, is there anyone who would like to, Anne?
Well, first of all, I need to say that I have to leave at 11 because I have to get to the synagogue. So I'm really sorry because I'm so happy to be with you again.
Thank you, Anne.
But I mean, I guess, the overwhelming sadness of the time. It's just, you know, and really, really identifying with people in the gas chambers and, just really feeling so I asked myself, is there anything I can give you at the time? And, it is, those beautiful images of, of the waters, the mother waters and the Shekhinah. trying to connect with the oneness, but, I'm just at a loss. And I know we all are.
Yeah. Yeah. We can come back to you in a minute I just want to see if anyone else has anything they'd like to say.
Well, I think that I have this deep faith in that the work of wholeness inside myself is like a microcosm of the world. And when I do that work inside myself to make that wholeness happen, then it is tikkun olam. There is a deep faith that that's true. And the voice of doubt is just relentless. And I don't know if that voice of doubt is actually some part of me, or whether it's the internalization of the voice of the world, or whether it matters which one it is. But the world that holds a kind of materialist consensus of what's true somehow becomes this very sabotaging force in the life of my faith. So I guess I'm looking for guidance how to work with that,
Right.
with that place. Yeah.
So I would guess that it's both. Yes, Chaya.
So I resonated with what you said, Chef, and with what you said, Anne. And I was just researching IFS and the Holocaust. Came across this woman who wrote that I think we have identities, whether we identify as a human, as a Jew, as a Holocaust survivor, or second generation LGBT, if we're into that, or and how and those parts are the exiled parts. And I think what keeps going through my head is Leonard Cohen's last song is The Help That Never Came. And I think that what we need to do is we've learned so much in whatever age we are in life experience, that if we use that life experience and say, look, my 15-year-old that's scared, I'm 60 plus years old. I have this 60 years of life experience. I will be there for you. I will connect with you, and we will not go through this alone. So I just wanted to say that, DeBarty.
Thank you, Chaya. Thank you. Doubt is a great example of a part that you can support, because there's so much being poured in from the world's doubt and rage and complete confusion. But there's a place in, I think, each of us that carries doubt, and it kind of can eat away at the faith unless we just make space to be with it and help it, because you can surround your doubt with your faith and your real knowing of the oneness, that is true. And the extent of grief and loss and despair is overwhelming. I still think that acknowledging it and then working with those completely heartbroken, distraught parts to just bring in the love and care which you so abundantly have in the world, and offering as much of that to yourself, so that you don't break, because so many of us are close to breaking, and a lot of people have broken and they're doing enormous harm in the world. So I can, I know you have to go in about 7 minutes, but I'd be happy to just do a little bit of IFS with either of you if you would like. And that's up to you.
Sure.
Okay, so let's start with you, Anne.
And wait, before, Anne, do you feel comfortable having it recorded, or would you like me to pause the recording?
Oh, you can record it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're a brave soul.
Well, I feel like we're all in this right now, so.
Oh, yeah, it's yeah, I in fairly excruciating back spasm, and I'm sitting up for the first time in several days, and so I just
But I do need to leave, so if that's
yes.
gonna be a problem.
Well, we'll I mean, I hate to start something and need a few more minutes and you have to go, but I'm willing to jump in if you would
Sure.
like. I mean, it's so much more complex, but let's just, so allowing yourself to go back into that really painful place. And also inviting as much as possible, letting your energy travel down into the pelvic bowl. And just asking who wants to speak for what's going on for you at the moment.
I feel like my heart wants to speak.
Yes, please.
But there are no words. I just feel so sad. And so bereft and angry and just all the emotions.
And letting, yeah, go ahead.
Feel so abandoned, so unseen, so frustrated. I mean, not just with Israel and the Palestinians, but just the way in which lies are just, just feeling overwhelmed by the lack of, just by all the lies in the world and the way in which people embrace them.
Yeah. So if it feels all right, just putting your hands on your heart and letting your heart know that what's happening is truly heartbreaking. And it's not alone. That you are here, the Anne Brenner who still has so many gifts. And if it feels right, also taking in the other 8 of us who are sending love and care to your heart. And anyone who doesn't feel up to that, it's fine if you don't, but just sending love and being, wanting your heart and to feel the caring that is coming from many people beyond us. Just a deep being with. And Michael is on your right and Gabriel on your left. Uriel before you, sending all that warmth and that gold, that warm golden healing light and energy into the front of your heart and the back of your heart. And Raphael, the archangel of healing and the mysteries, all of the mysteries, is all the way at your back, sending love and healing and support, especially through the back of your heart, and resting in the divine embrace. Asking your heart if she feels less alone right now. And how might we help?
Oh, I feel like I'm drawing on such a history with you and with Shefa, with Chaya. I feel like I'm drawing on just a history of this community and the sense of knowing that there are people who get it, who get what I am, who get what I know to be true.
Yes.
And I always say I didn't make sense to myself until I became part of this community. So, just being with all of you, and I'm so sorry I have to leave,
I know, Anne. It is recorded, so it's not the same as your wonderful presence, but keep taking that in. I mean, you and I met the day you took your first book to the post
I
office.
just saw the picture you took of me when we put it in the post office.
So many blessings, Anne, and keep taking in. It's so important as someone who gives out and gives out to be taking in and supporting your heart and every part of your being. I love you, dear.
I love you too. Thank you. So many memories, and see you all hopefully in January. Please. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry I have to leave.
So are there questions or comments before we move to spend a little time with Shefa? Charlotte, did you want to say something?
Well, I'm a newcomer, and I just wanted to say that I was I'm have a feeling of just, which I think Anne really discussed and already identified, but this kind of yearning, the word yearning just kept coming to me of wanting to hold other people, to reach and hold other people into that space that is calmer, and even if it's just in them, just in that moment, and that's sometimes all we can do, I think. That's
Yeah.
all.
And it really, thank you. It really matters to spend some time taking in the goodness. And then it's so much easier to be with someone else and supporting them. So it's not taking every little bit of what you've managed to put together. Chef is my main teacher of overflow. I don't know how often I get all the way to overflow, but I am very aware of how essential it is to nourish ourselves. And the spaciousness, it's like in the Min HaMeitzar, from our anguish and constriction, we call out Karatiyat. And it's not just that we're answered a Merchavia from the great expanse, but we get to take in that great expansiveness and spaciousness. You know, remembering that clock time is a very narrow band of real time, which is all time, and that we're all meant to be within a mishkan that has beauty and doesn't cut us off from the world. It's not like a battleship, but a little bit of space that we can hold and let the world come to arm's length, but not all the way in. That did not feel good.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Shefa, would you like to play a little with doubt? I don't know where we can go in a short time, but I'm up to trying if you would like.
Yeah, and I think that like one of my motivations is feeling like there is, if I am a microcosm of the world, then there's a battle going on in me, which I don't want to be sending out into the world as
Exactly.
It's a microcosm as my faith and my doubt at war inside me sometimes. And so I'd like to be able to work with my doubt in some way that includes it in the faith,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah. So would you like to have the recording turned off? Because I think it would at least help to be able to just say whatever comes up. And that's your choice, but
Yeah, I don't care.
okay.
I'm already out there.
And so connecting again, allowing yourself to drop more fully into the wide inside spaces, into the Merchavia. And noticing your doubt and noticing your faith.
Yeah, it's not just my faith, it's like what I know to be true.
Yes,
I
right.
know it to be true. Yeah. And there's this weird thing of like being a teacher and not feeling like I can't teach this, and so it can't be true because I can't teach it. Like I know
Yeah.
it's true, but the doubt that says, well, if you can't communicate it, then it's not, you know.
Oh, that's a very tricky distractor.
Is it a firefighter? I don't know.
Yeah. Yep. So acknowledging that this is a war within, and you'd like to end the war. And it doesn't mean getting rid of doubt. It means being in a different relationship with doubt. And if it's possible, inviting the doubting part to also feel there's so much of the rest of you that knows the truth with capital letters. And you're not denying what the doubt believes is true, but that you are held in the microcosm that's all of you. And asking the doubt what's willing to say at this moment. What does it actually want or need?
Well, well, it's sort of saying, I want you to be to not separate yourself from the world that believes this. You know, there is a consensus of what reality is, and if you don't agree to it, this is what the doubt says, then nobody's gonna understand what the fuck you're talking about, because you're not agreeing to this, you know, consensual reality. And you'll be a mystic, but you'll be alone.
Letting it know that you're sorry that it believes that. There's way more than one, what would be called consensus reality. And we've been living with the separation consciousness where that's a lot of what everything being separate from everything else can't believe in the oneness. But more and more and more and more, there are millions of people who are more conscious, who are more connected with a oneness consciousness. And in the oneness consciousness, which we really are moving toward, even though the backlash right now is the worst it's ever been, maybe, I think. Inviting the doubt to consider the possibility that we are in a new time and that it's actually safe to hold what you actually know of the connectedness of everything. That everything is connected, that millions and millions of people are living in this place where there may be doubts that come up because we are human. But not that take over and demand that you not teach what you know.
Yeah, well, I think the doubt says you can't, that it's not possible to teach it.
But you do. Anyway, that's not IFS. None of this is a good example of IFS. I'm coming back now. Notice how you feel towards the doubt.
Well, I think that that insight of the doubt is trying to keep me safe. Like that,
Mhm.
that's a, that there might be some twisted love there.
Right. And it is trying to keep you safe, but in an old paradigm. And asking if that's part of the doubt, because parts have parts. Asking if this one who doubts and wants to keep you safe can expand just a little. And what would it need to consider that there are other possibilities for safety, for your safety, which you're appreciating that it wants to keep you safe.
I lost the thread of your question.
Yeah. My pain levels have gone up, and I am not really, it turns out, in a place where I can do this. And I apologize, because it is really a good way to get what IFS is about. Is so if I were able to do it, we would just be very spacious with the doubt and eventually move towards it understanding that you actually have been teaching this. Well, I've been studying with you for 30 something years, and you've been teaching the oneness all along. But if you're being limited in your feeling good about your teaching, then that's something that the doubt could begin to experience from the deep knowing and the faith, and getting to understand that you are needed more than ever going forward. Now, that
Yeah, I'd
I'm
like it
not,
to, I'd like it to be
yeah,
more of a dance. I'd like it to be more of a dance than a
right,
battle.
yes. And so before we shift, just really letting it know that you'd like it to be more of a dance than a battle, because your internal battle is not useful for you to be in an internal battle. And you would really appreciate it being willing to dance with you with the whole spectrum. And just spend a couple of minutes with that, with my apologies.
Ellen, would you like to do a part 2 at a later time? If you're feeling kind of not up to continuing?
Well, sure, but I also, I mean, we have
Do
a
what you
bunch of
can.
time left.
Okay, but I'm just giving you the space to.
Thank you. I might take you up on it. I
Okay.
guess I'm probably best off doing a little bit of reading from the stuff and then answering questions. Um, The managers tend to be controlling, critical, judging, future-oriented, risk-averse, often high-functioning, and care a lot about what others think about us. The firefighters tend to be distracting, impulsive, reactive, present-oriented, easily judged, dissociating, self-harming, and don't care what people think. So if you think of, addictions and self-harm and other things like that, not in the traditional way, but this is part of a system where there's an inner war going on. The exiles, when they're burdened, they embody fear, pain, loss, rage, sadness, betrayal, shame, overwhelm. When they're unburdened, they embody joy, creativity, sensitivity, vulnerability, and open-heartedness. So one of the biggest reasons for working in an IFS perspective, whether it's in pastoral care and spiritual direction, in any kind of work with someone, including friends, not necessarily to be an IFS therapist, but these exiled parts have such joy when they get to the place of unburdening and come up with incredibly creative ways to give away these things that have taken up so much space inside them. Sometimes they're just filled with negativity of every kind you can imagine. And both with clients and with my own and colleagues, one of the great things is that you can just do sessions with colleagues, just do trades, because it's not the therapist who's the main event, it's the parts and supporting work with the parts. I've had 3-year-olds just take off running in the wind or take off on a tricycle, and they're so happy, and there's no that particular pulsing of pain and hurt and shame isn't there. So we can be more full of all the good stuff because there's less banging away at us. And when I say that, it sounds like I'm blaming the exiles. I'm not. They had very good reasons to be as traumatized as they are, but there's less and less of that present now. So this only has part of IFS. Kind of the first thing is the 6 F's. Find the part. It may be, do you sense it in or around your body? What kind of sense or hearing of it? You focus on it kindly. How do you feel towards it? It's not about the part, but how do you feel towards the part? And if you feel angry at it, ask if that angry part might be able to go off to the side, to the couch, or to the bleachers, or a waiting room, whatever. And if they're willing to go, then there's more possibility of a direct connection. And it may be that there are 5 or 6 things that are in the way. It may be a lot of fear of that part because it threatens us. So asking if it agrees to go, then it really does go to the side. And you want to have them watching what happens so that you can they can realize that there's a different place. Like with Shefa, if I'd been able to have enough sechel, well, not that actually, more bina and da'at, is helping the part see who we are now, and that we don't have to follow that part's belief to be safe. And as the doubt part gets to know the deep knowing parts, that's when the shift starts to happen. Because while it's in its place where its whole belief is it must keep you safe. Anyway, I won't go there right now. Flesh it out, trying to get to know the part more, befriending it. Often the parts can sort of grab on, and some of them will be a self-like part that wants to believe that it is ourself. And those are a little harder to work with because you need to get just a little bit of separation before it can realize that, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was a part too. And then make some space for ourself. Remember, we all have a self, no matter what's happened, how early, or anything. And the other piece for now, a couple of years ago, Gan Eden reopened to us, to all of us who are wrestling with how do we help this oneness stuff come to be. And I've had a lot of journeys of this invitation, which is a very real invitation. And there are portals into Eden of every kind. There are water portals, there are land portals, there are air portals. I haven't found a fire portal, but there probably is. One of them, for me, and I don't know if this will show up, but a friend of mine made this mem, and it literally has a door in it. And I realized that walking through that door takes me directly into the Garden of Eden. And everybody's Eden is a little different, or maybe a lot different, but it's like the grass in Eden. And there's not a lot of grass because grass is stupid. It's not nourishing for anybody, but sorry. Every blade of grass knows that it has an angel or nature spirit saying, grow, grow. And it's like Shekhinah's apple orchard is in the Garden of Eden. The river that flows through Eden is the one thing that everyone has had so far. And it has this lovely bend in the river where there are some hot springs coming in. It's very shallow. You can just lean back. And there's a lot of healing just in being in the water from the second day of creation. It's got so much aliveness. And there are also a lot of grandmothers who have volunteered to help heal people in the river. And Sarah's tent is an example of one of the places that is available to us to really rest and heal. And bring your child selves, because there's not an inner child, there are probably hundreds of inner children, and having this place to go in the process of healing. And then most of them choose to stay there and have made their own sanctuaries by the ocean. Often dolphins show up in these coves where little ones, not just mine. One client rode this huge wave into the Garden of Eden and then discovered all kinds of things. Many of us have inner landscapes where we've done work of different kinds, and those seem to find their way into our own Edens. Most of them have a mountain, not very high, but a mountain. And I just discovered, it was actually in your workshop in Tampa last year. There was this phenomenal lake where there was a lot of healing going on. And then the next time I looked, the lake was at the bottom of the mountain, and I just had never seen it before. So I would like to do an invitation into the Garden of Eden and see if anything comes up while you're there. And we can just be with whatever does come up. And kind of as an intro to Eden, an invitation to feel a smile right up at your crown and let it come in to your head, to your brain, and inviting the smile kind of settle in and slide down into the limbic system. It's approximately behind your nose, and supporting that with a smile. And down into the throat and thyroid and the old brain. And just sending this smile outward and inward and down to high heart. Letting that smile have encouragement and to encourage our hearts. And moving down into solar plexus, that big nerve plexus below the breast. And that smile supporting your kidneys and adrenals. Lots of extra warmth and the warm sunlight. And down into the pelvic bowl. And seeing if you can let it move those last couple of inches to the pelvic floor and the perineum at the center of the pelvic floor. And inviting the ancient divine feminine, the mother waters, to be with you. And connecting with the earth, with the whole earth's body, with the oceans and rivers, wherever you find yourself. and letting that be an entrance into Gan Eden. Michael used to have the twirling sword, but he's exchanged it for a guitar and a lute, sometimes a mandolin, playing a hallelujah, a welcome song. And the Shekhinah, who used to be in the gates, is there with a magnificent smile and a welcoming home. And finding yourself wherever you happen to be, inviting doubts or fears to come in with you, but to be more of observers so that more of you is free to experience the holiness of everything that's there and your own holiness, your own beauty. And just wandering because everything is beautiful, is holy. And it may or may not look like what it looks like in this world. As we are in the fifth dimension and in the oneness. And inviting whatever experience comes to you now. Becoming a well-watered garden. Taking another minute. And if you have been in Eden or something like it, just making a doorway or a pathway of some kind to your life here so you can more easily return on your own. And coming back. Would anyone like to speak of or sing of what happened? Joined by Sunny, the sunshine boy.
Can very easily speak, but I would rather have somebody else who hasn't spoken to speak.
Well, looks like you're the leadoff batter, Shefa.
Well, it was a very watery image, but very interesting because it was like there's a fountain, it was there was a fountain from the deep, really. And I was in the, receiving the fountain, what the fountain from the deep wanted to give. But then when I focused up at the top of the fountain, there were like flocks of birds, like just coming out from the top of the fountain. I've never seen that before. So it was, I guess it was like a place of, connection, both to the depths and to the expanse. Really, that was the feeling or the image of it. Is that's my Eden, is the total connection to the depths and total connection through the, to the wide expanse.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. So if anyone else would like to speak to their experience, that's great. You can also speak to what you would like to hear more of, which is your other option. And I'm sorry I didn't think of having everyone introduce themselves. I have never done a class on Zoom, so this is
Well, I feel not really ready to share about my personal journey right now, but I have a question.
mhm.
So I'm not a therapist. But what I have a vision of is to be able to bring this paradigm to the patients that I care for as a chaplain.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I do that already indirectly. I have been working with an IFS therapist on my own, and it's already been part of my chaplaincy training. And so I do it indirectly, where in my mind and heart and soul, I'm processing and interpreting what people say through this lens. And I don't feel like I know how to go the second step of actually directly talking with a person in terms of inviting a part or naming what I'm doing explicitly. And I'm not even sure if that's how beneficial that would be, if it may be better to just stay indirect with it.
If it's someone that you're working with long term, it might come to the place of being more explicit, but generally, you don't need to get into the terminology. It's more, oh, it sounds like part of you would like this and part of you doesn't. Can we talk about how to help reconcile those or something? Because it's not necessary. I think you were on when I mentioned that I've sent out to, are you on the OHLL list? Is that how you? Good. For the IFS immersion, which is free for 30 days and $99 if you decide you want to keep it forever. But the main book that I was using in the handouts is this No Bad Parts by Dick Schwartz. That's his latest book. And it's good. Unfortunately, in the Audible, because I really like Audible, he's not the one speaking the book, except for some of the exercises. But in the Radical Wholeness, Philip Shepherd's book, the Audible is read by him, and so it really flows out wonderfully. And it may even be free on Audible, but I'm delighted that you have access to IFS, both for your own work and with the class as part of chaplaincy. It was not when I was in school. Used to be free, not now. Okay, thank you, Mira.
May I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
And thank you for that. Like, it feels intuitive to ask about a part when I'm aware that it's someone's exiled part that's carrying pain. And for some reason, I feel I'm carrying a lot more fear about how to talk with someone's, like, a firefighter part. I have there are a lot of people who come through the hospital with various addictions, or who are trying to control the process of their illness and control the medical staff and so the managers. And so, without being explicit and naming and using terminology, how to kind of bring some softness to those parts. Like, what are some questions, like, what, that might unearth the dance within without really naming with terminology, if you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah. One of the things is really the 5 F's, the focus on it, befriend it, because until you're more experienced, and maybe you wouldn't do this in chaplaincy anyway, you want to work much more with the protectors than with the exiles. And the protectors need support as well. You don't have to call it a protector, but you can say, I notice that there's a part of you that really hates your addiction, for example. And could we maybe find a different way to be with that? That's just, one possibility, because mostly the protectors won't really unburden until the one they're protecting, the exile, gets unburdened, but they can go part of the way, which then tends to make them more likely to be willing to work with the exiled part. I don't, I'm getting a backlog. Is there something that changed, Chaya? So I'm hearing my voice. Okay. One of the questions I like a lot is, if you didn't have to be doing this job, what would you like to be doing? And it's often completely the opposite from what they're doing, which is, like holding on tightly to try to not lose ground to whether it's the manager or the firefighter. And there are IFS therapists who don't use the language at all. They just, it's easy to say, well, I see a part of you, and a part of you, and, we'd like to help them get to know each other, for example. But so many parts love that question of, if you didn't have to be doing this job, what would you like to be doing? So that's a start. But on the handout sheets, I only went to the beginning of the IFS process, and I can actually send the later steps in an email if people want. But any of the books will have that.
Well, thank you very much.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
that
very
was a
welcome.
nice toe in the water. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Anybody else? We don't have a lot of time, but at least so I know how you might want to follow up.
I have a question about
Mhm.
like in the spiritual work that I do. I feel like I'm dismantling my defenses and becoming more vulnerable. And there's always this idea like that, oh yeah, you thank them for doing their job because they did a good job and now you don't need them anymore. But I actually don't feel that. I don't actually feel that's true. I feel like they never did a good job. All of my defenses have limited my authentic self, and so when I feel disingenuous sort of thanking them for protecting me because they never did.
Right.
And so
two things. One is, I would guess if you went back early enough, there was some way in which they protected you as a baby or a 2 or 3-year-old or a 5-year-old who, was entering kindergarten. There was some way that what hasn't worked as an adult came into being for some reason. And it does really help if you can find their beginnings. Like, when did you start believing you had to XYZ? And the thing is, we're actually not trying to get rid of the defenses. There's nothing that keeps them more fixed than thinking we want to get rid of them. So what we actually want is to let them grow into their own wholeness, which doesn't include the frantic or angry or doubting. It shifts. And it really is a relationship building, because from the way you're saying they were never helpful, then it is disingenuous to thank them for trying. But parts don't tend, well, unless it's a legacy burden, which is certainly possible, or something that you grow up with the family believing you can never trust anyone or something, then you are like nurturing those parts to understand that that was what the family believed, but as a way to be in the world, there are other possibilities. And legacy unburdenings is a whole other thing that is part of IFS that I recommend, anyone who's interested, study that, because that is a really great subject. And I'm pretty sure in this free 30-day intensive, one of the people at least is dealing with legacy burdens and racial issues, because I think it's Delran. I just saw this yesterday, so I haven't really looked at it or seen who's doing it besides Dick and Frank and Delran. But, even if you don't do all parts of it, it's a great way to sort of jump in with more than toes. You get to get pretty wet in a pleasant way.
I have another question. I actually have another question, but if someone else wants to ask or speak, I want to make space. So if there's time for another question.
Well, let's see if it's something that can be answered, because I just want to end with the resting in the divine embrace. So ask away.
Okay, actually, it's following up to what you said, Shefa, about feeling disingenuous when you are thanking your parts for protecting you, and like that aspect of it, I feels okay for me. But it's saying like, and I don't need you anymore. Like if I try to tell my parts I don't need them anymore, I find these other voices saying you do need us, and then
Yes.
there's and like I'm wondering who is where, which voice is the self? If I say, well, really, I don't need you. Yes, you do.
So when you are in what Dick calls enough self, because you feel that because you're spacious and you're not judging and you're in a kind and compassionate place, you're not trying to get rid of a part, because that's going to be another part. So, but it's a great question, because the process really is about getting to know where that part, where that being came from. What was it that triggered its normal flowing self to get constricted or something else? And you're not trying to get rid of them or say, I don't need you anymore. I don't need you in that job. I would love to have you choose what job you would like to do now. And that, some of them want to go rest in the Caribbean for a while and then take on being cheerleaders for you, being a support instead of a smushing down. And others, I still have physical problems, but I'm 79. However, some of the problems I used to have gone away since I've worked with those firefighters. So, what would you like to be doing if you didn't have to be doing this? And then when they're getting to understand, if they're saying, no, you do, then they're not in a place of agreement with you. So there's more work to do. That's all. It's not that they're being picky or, it's just they need more attention. And there's the 8 C's, the compassion and curiosity and kindness isn't a C. I always forget them, but connection and all of that is really worth our time and energy because it changes things so dramatically. So
What you're
thank you.
looking for, Ellen, is compassion.
Yeah, compassion and curiosity, because, you know, I can be in compassion, but like not really be curious about what this wants to tell me. I mean, you know, that's why asking the annoyed ones and the fearful ones, if they can step aside just for a little while and promising to bring them back, because they learn a lot in the process that happens when it's an open heart. Yay, hearts. We are resting in the divine embrace. Timeless time and placeless place. We are resting in the divine embrace. Timeless time and placeless place. We are resting in the divine embrace. Timeless time and placeless place. We are resting in the divine embrace. Timeless time and placeless place. And a blessing to be held and nourished during this difficult, heartbreaking time, to let your heart keep filling up with the goodness and being kind. Thank you each so much for coming.
Thank
And
you,
Thanks.
everybody. And thank you, Ellen.
Thank you, Ellen.
Beautiful as always.
Thank
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Feel better, dear.
Love everybody.
Thank you.
You well. Bye.
Bye.